Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Game of Thrones When It's Coming. This will be another update video since we had an update during the week a couple of days ago, and this update has a lot of things in terms of all-out war balancing, and it also has some general game interface and other interesting and hopefully helpful things added as well. But first of all, of course, the all-out war related stuff. You can see here that there's a bunch of new features, improvements, adjustments, rebalancing, so on. New features such as sharing own army, refreshing ally resilience and carrying capacity. Not sure with the last part how that is actually applied. The load and unload experience from warehouse, experience from healing soldiers and resilience restoration. So a bunch of things that were asked for to kind of make things a bit more simple. And then we also have the rebalancing in terms of troops with Eagle Eyes that can trigger pincer attack, which is probably going to affect defensive situations a lot, mainly because when you were attacking castles and such, then there could be a bunch of bowmen inside that just pretty much fires arrows over you and rains you down, and it's near impossible to get through because you just get pincered. Some commander skill adjustments, and well, then the biggest part in my opinion is that the counter ratio within the event will be increased from 1.35 to 1.5, which we will go over when we look at the event at the end of the video. Then there's of course some improvements regarding group of rebel leaders, which will show recommended troop type and number of troops required. Some UI map searching changes, the removal of VIB quest, alliance quest, and then of course the recommended commander rankings has been updated as well, so on. So that we will take a look at that. So we will see how it all plans out. Let's first take a look at the updated commander rankings. The commander rankings was something that's added to the game to help newer players understand certain things, or to help older players to figure out what they are missing from the lineup that could help them. For example, these commanders that are here are meant for gathering resources, or good for gathering resources. These help with research, these help with training and so on, and we have had those for some time. I believe the Rebel Leader one we also had, where you can see that the top ones are the ones that are most commonly used, and the bottom ones are some that are used in certain situations or niche setups. But the newest things they've added is the three bottom ones, which are focused around the commander setups. And the first one is for the weakness setup, where they come with the best recommended setup for it, based on popular voting or popular recommendation as well. And then of course there's also ways to how to start in terms of recommendation and which commanders to focus on. The same applies for the female commander setup and combo lineup or on-hit lineup. So go in there to check it out and figure out how you can start up with your setups. Moving on to the next part, we are taking a look at the changes to the Overworld map and different features that are on there currently. They are trying to make the power estimation a little bit more clear for newer players. So they have added some kind of recommended troop settings for each rebel group or rebel camp. You can see for a normal level 13 rebel group, it's recommended that you have 20k tier 3 troops that you bring along when attacking this specific one. For a rebel group level 10 that's advanced, you are recommended to have 480k tier 2 troops going into this match or this battle. This is not indicating the or including the power of the stats that your commanders have, but it's just a general like pure troop type. If you are just taking troops without having any additional stats, you will probably need around this amount to actually win the battle. The same applies to the rebel camps. You can see here that for a level 2 rebel camp you are recommended to have 650k tier 2 troops. For a level 5 rebel camp you are recommended to have a 2.12 million tier 4 troops. So all in all, it's super simple, and it gives newer players a direction to work in, so they know how strong they have to be to beat certain things. Of course, it's also possible to always try certain things with the rebel groups. You can always limit test without having any consequences from it. Of course, rebel camps is a bit more difficult because you would actually lose troops, so that's that you should probably follow the recommendation on the rebel camps at least. They've also added changes to the research function. You can see now, for example, that there is the resource plot, which focuses on the resource nodes around the map. Then there's the world map monsters, which is a rebel group, rebel camps, and dragon layers. And you can also see they have added the ready part to both of those. And then there's rebel leaders, which shows which rebel leaders are currently spawned in, and which rebel leaders are spawning in tomorrow, for example, or in a couple of days, so it's somewhat easier to figure out when the specific rebel leader that you need spawns in. And in terms of searching, it's still similar to what's used to be. One thing that's to note is that it doesn't always work exactly as you want. For example, you can see here now that even though the rebel leaders are spawned in, then it gives you an error, which is super simple to kind of clarify or to solve. You go over to this one, then switch back to the one that you wanted to have, and then it should be working again. So if you encounter that error, you can quickly fix it that way. It's just a minor bug, I assume, and they will probably fix it to the next update, so it's nothing major. Overall, I think the addition of the power estimation for rebel camps and rebel groups is good for newer players. The searching requires a little bit of tuning, so it's not required to click as much, but it's still nice to have. So before ending this video, we are of course going to take a look at some of the changes they've made for All Out War and some of the adjustments. One thing I won't be covering are the commanders and some of the bug fixes and such. I don't really have all the commanders that have been changed, so I don't really know the impact of it. One thing that you should note is that the changes to Eagle Eyes and the counter ratio is super important, but we'll talk about it in a moment. Another thing that's been highly requested is the changes to Warehouse. And you can see now they have added a quick unload button, so you can pretty much just decide very fast what you want to do, and that way it's also much more simplified, because the system we had before was difficult for some people to understand, that you had to put everything at 0. And it caused some internal conflicts and made people take out stuff from the warehouse they shouldn't, and overall it wasn't really that great. And I think this system here makes it much better. It's much more simplified, and that way we can avoid confusion, and I think everyone will be happy with it that way. And I think if they keep going in that direction where they try to simplify the event a little bit more, a lot more people will be interested in it and will be taking a liking to it, because the beginning it was really complicated for people to understand, so they had a hard time on playing the event because they didn't have the time to invest to actually understand the event. Of course, the Eagle Eye pincer changes is because, well, if you're trying to siege a castle like this and there are like 20 marches outside that are blocking the gate, and there's 50 Eagle Eyes inside that are just pincering all your armies, then you would just melt your troops, and it would be really difficult to siege against castles, and you could just stack health on your walls and buildings. And overall I think it's a really nice change. It's a needed change because it forces people to actually play something else, which is also why I think they changed the counter ratio from 1.35 to 1.5, so that people just don't go bows but can actually go something else, so they have a diverse formation and can counter people. I personally find it a little bit of a shame, because the 1.45 counter ratio we had before made it so that if you played around resilience well, you were invested into one troop type, for example, then you could actually win even though you were countered without having super harsh losses. But that's just my opinion, and it's probably some part of the balancing. So it's harder for you now to go around alone and kill stuff, so probably going around in groups is probably better at this point. Another thing they've added is the refresh button. You can see I've had the boxes up here, so right now it's not updated. If I click on the refresh, it will update. You can see that I've moved my troops, so it will update to and 97 resilience is left, which is also a nice little change. Not something that has been highly requested, but it's nice. And that way we don't have to click up and down with the boxes that are above. And aside from this, there's of course a bunch of improvements and buttons and so on. I can't remember if the buttons for medical troops, logistics troops, were colored for resilience and healing, but it's probably a nice thing. But I think it's a nice change. It's making the event a little bit more simplified, less complicated, so people have an easier time to understand it, to do the correct things. Overall, a nice change, I think. I hope this kind of covers the most of the update in this video. I hope you're all enjoying the All Out War event, of course, and that you're enjoying your weekend. I would really appreciate it if you're subscribing to the channel and liking the video. And of course, if you're new to the game or new to the channel and want to play the game, the link is down in the description below, and so it is for the Game of Thrones Winter's Coming Discord group. And aside from that, I hope you all have a nice time with the game. So take care, guys. Bye bye.